Okay, today we're working on our July block, which is the rail fence block, and it's really the same block 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, let me do it on this paper. As you can see on the paper, I haven't trimmed away the 4 blocks. I'm going to keep them together. Now, you can do it a couple ways. You can trim all 4 blocks and do them separately. That's fine. You could trim them in half so you have either direction, so you have 2 to work on at a time. Excuse me. But I'm going to give it a go with all 4 of them. So I've trimmed normally on the dashed lines. I see I have A, B, C, D, and as you'll notice, A's going this way, B's going this way, C's going up. So they're all opposite of each other. The nice thing with that is there's no seams to match, or we don't have to worry about not only matching the seams, but having seam allowances bumping into each other, especially this close, because these are pretty small. The other thing I want to talk about is if you want to cut a strip of fabric, because number 1 is going to be the same in all 4. Number 2 is going to be the same in all 4. 3 and 4 and so forth. So you could cut 1 strip of fabric for each color. So if you want to do that, I generally will take my ruler. Let me see if I can use a regular ruler here. And I will measure 1 unit, which would be like 1A, and I as a rule will go a 1/2 inch over in each direction. I need a 1/4, so I don't want to cut it so close that I have exactly a 1/4 in case I don't sew quite right or I don't lay it down quite right. And the whole point of the paper piecing is you don't have to be exact with your cutting. So in this case, I've got my 1/2 inch before, and it's an odd number. It's let me see, half, so it's 3/4 of an inch, and then half again. So I would probably cut my strip maybe to either 2 inches. I like to work with even numbers when I can, or 1 3/4, something in there. Just allow yourself that extra. You're going to feel like, oh, but I'm wasting, but really you're wasting 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 inch tops. And when you're first doing that, it's more important that you get it done. You don't have to keep ripping it out because you have such little room for error than it is to save that 1/4 of an inch. So we would put down 1 first, then 2, 3, and 4. It's pretty simple. So I've done the first one, and now we're going to go ahead and do the second one. It doesn't matter which one I do second. The important thing is I want to make sure that I trim both of these sides that are on the paper so that I'm not running over into the next one I'm doing. So I've done 1A. Now I'm going to do, I've done A section. Now I'm going to do B section. And I laid my fabrics, you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't leave memory to chance, I guess. So I just make it easy on myself because I have some similar fabrics. You may have similar fabrics that I just lay them out in that order, and then I just know through this whole block, I know where to go for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm on B. I happen to have, pardon my arm here, I happen to have a piece left from when I was cutting before, and I also have this piece. So let me see. I'm gonna lay down this one, and see, this is, if I put this down this way, it's just barely right. But if I put it again, if I put it this way, I'm within my parameters that I need. So 1B, again, I'm going to use the water-soluble fabric glue. I'm going to put a little bit of glue there. If you've seen my videos before, you know I've always used a pin, but I've just decided that using this glue stick, because you may have to move your pin, especially in this one, because you don't have a lot of it's not very big. So because I want to be able to trim my first one before I get started. Some people think that they don't trim until after the first one, they've put the second one to it, but really you want to trim up that first one so you get an idea of what everything's supposed to be. So first fabric face up. I'm going to turn it over, and let me see. I got to go trying to think of which way I have to do this to cut. I'm going to lay my postcard down between the line of 1 and 2. I'm folding my line. I'm folding my paper right over my postcard. I've got my add a quarter ruler. By the way, they do have a add an eighth ruler, and you can see the difference. Can you see the let me see if I can put my hand behind them. So obviously one's a 1/4 of an inch ridge, one's a 1/8 of an inch ridge. I've used the 1/8 of an inch, but I tend to, I don't know, I don't do especially well with it, so I'm going to have to practice at that again. But if you were doing small pieces and your seams were just too big, you can either use the add an eighth, or what I do is I use my add a quarter, and then I can always trim it down more with my scissors if I need to, depending on what seam is next to it. So now I'm going to add my number 2 fabric, and I was working from this charm pack, so I just want to make sure I'm wide enough this way, and I am. I'm going to give it a little pinch. Remember that you want to have your stitch length on about 1.8. Let me bring it up here. Sorry. There we go. And I'm sewing on this line, starting a little before the line and going a little, and I mean a little, like 1 or 2 stitches. 2 is always good. People sometimes do 1, and it's really not quite enough. If you do too many, you can always, because you haven't done a locking stitch, you can always just give it a little, just light pull, and it'll come off of there if you need to. Now I'm going to do my ironing. Let me zoom back again. So I'm laying it paper down. I want to make sure that I don't get a crease right in here. So I kind of hold it with this hand while I get my little iron with the other. You can use your little wooden iron. This is a wooden iron. But I'm in love with this new little iron that I have. So it's small, and nothing works as well as an actual iron does. If you're going to use the wooden iron, that's fine. But once you get done each section, you really should take it to the ironing board and press it. So now I'm going to trim out my next one, or trim out the one. I'm going to trim between 2 and 3, because we are doing our seam allowance. In essence, we're doing our seam allowance after we sew, and that's what makes it work out so well. Okay, so there's number 2. I'm going to go ahead with number 3. I'm going to finish up the 4 pieces, the 4 sections, but you notice, see, there's room there. Nobody's running into each other as long as you trim as you go. So let me get the 4 sections done, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so you can see here I've got all 4 sections done, but I still have a little trimming up to do, and I wanted to do that so that you could see when you go to trim. You know how I was talking about that if you have a few stitches over the edge, more than you need, you don't have to really worry about it. So let me show you. I'm trying to see which one I haven't trimmed yet. Let's see if it's this one. So you can see here, see I've stitched way up to here and I didn't really need to. So if I make sure I can do this so you can see it. So I'm putting my postcard down on my solid line and I'm pulling it back. And you see how I've got it still stitched there. I just have to just pick it away gently and lay it down. So it's no real big problem to if you do go a few stitches beyond. You don't want to yank it and rip your paper. And then I'm just going to put my ruler on. And take those away. Also, I think I tried to do a sample here, so let me just look what I did with it. Let's see. If you look here, you notice that, can you see that this little strip here is a little shorter than the rest? That's fine, don't worry about it. You've got a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, so if you have a little guy that's a little shorter, as long as you got like 1/8 of an inch to be able to grab onto it, don't worry about it. So when you trim it, you're just going to trim it the way you normally would and not worry about whether that one little piece or 2 little pieces is down a little more. Also, remember we want to trim up the edges. And I have one side I haven't done yet because I wanted to show you. Let me get that just right there for you. There we go. You see the whole thing? So obviously my postcard isn't big enough to go all the way across, and that's not that big of a deal. I'm going to kind of center it. I've got it on my solid lines. I'm going to pull back. Again, I've stitched more than I needed, so I'm just going to, let me get my fingers out of your way here. Pull that down. Okay, so again, my postcard's in the middle. I'm going to start with my ruler all the way over on the end, but I've got enough postcard to keep that nice and straight. I don't have to worry about getting that postcard all the way to the end. And then I'll trim, and then I'll just slide my ruler down, and again I've got enough postcard to support it, and just trim off the whole thing. So I don't want you to you know, feel like you got to move a whole lot of things. It's just the postcard is something for you to fold your paper over and to butt your ruler against. So if I only had, you know, this much postcard on the ruler, I'm still doing fine. So let me finish trimming this up and we'll start to sew it together. Okay, I have my block all trimmed up, and I can see I've got a little space, should be about even all the way around. And again, you don't have to do it this way the very first time you do something. If you want to now cut it down the middle and put these two together separately, these two together, and then put them together, there's no problem with that. And you want to make sure you just cut evenly, or close to evenly, but you need to be outside of the dashed lines on both ones. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this, and what I'm looking to do to begin with is have about the same distance from this dash line to the top of the page on both sides. And it's, you know, it's a little bit of a guesstimate. I'm going to then take a pin. I'm going to stick it in this corner, and I should have my paper flat down because it's easier, so don't try to do it on your lap. I'm putting my pin in that corner. I'm just pulling up, and what I'm trying to do is make sure I'm in the corner of this one, which I'm not. So I'm going to lift this so that I come out right in that corner. I'm in that corner, and again, I want to make sure that my pin is straight. So I'm going to just push it a little ways through. Now I'm going to do the other one. this corner right here. I'm going to put my pin in, laying it flat, pull my paper up, and I'm off, and I know I'm off because look how my other pin is on an angle. So I'm just going to lift this paper up and put the pin in that corner. So I want to make it so that both of my pins are straight this way, and then I'm going to put a clip in. So everybody's looking pretty straight. And then I'm just going to put a clip on. Then I'm going to go and do the same thing in these other two corners. Put my pin in the corner, pull my paper up, and it's pretty darn close on that one. Okay, I've got one in. Now I'm going to do this corner right here. If I had two separate pieces, I would still do the same exact thing. And that one went in perfectly. Considering that the rest of it is all even, that would only make sense. So again, I'm going to push my pins through a little way. So I want to make sure they're not curved. Let me see if I can curve it. See how this one's slanted? I want to make sure I'm not slanted. I want to be nice and straight. And then I want to make sure I'm straight this way as well as this way. Once I'm nice and straight, I'm going to put a clip in. Just want to double check that my pins are all nice and straight. I'm going to move my clip down a little closer to the end. I'm going to move my other clip down closer to the end. I'm going to take my pin out of this end, and I'm just going to stick it in this other corner, make sure these two corners are straight. And they are. So I'm going to put a clip right here and a clip right here. And again, the reason I don't want to just take this pin and then turn it because when and use it, because when I bend it back, I'm moving that back paper. So I got my clips on. The side I'm sewing on is the side, see the clip is flat on the back. So now I'm just going to sew it together. So the next thing I'm going to do, now that I have that straight, now I still haven't sewn in this direction, we've only sewn across here, is I ran my seam ripper across to separate the paper from one side and the other, and I'm going to tear that off because when we go in the other direction, I don't want to have like paper on top of paper. So I'm just going to gently tear that paper away, and I'm using paper that's made for paper piecing, so it comes away real easy, especially since we've sewn on it and we've bent it there and so forth. So I've torn my paper away just in the seam allowance on both sides. Then I'm going to open this up, and I want to press one seam in one direction and one seam in the other direction, because my next way I'm going is folding here, so I want to have one seam that way and one seam the other. So let me just press that. And I always press both sides. And now I'm going to pin the same way I did before. So So I'm going to get a few pins out. So I'm going to go to my corner, push it through, pull my fabric up, just a tad off. I'm going to go to the next corner, which is right where you tore the paper off, and this line this way. So you can see your actual stitching right here. And this one shouldn't be too bad. Oop. I only need to worry about getting the up and down because the seams will lock together. Then I'm going to go to the other corner. Oop, I lost a pin. And put that in. And the center, the most important thing, the center pin I lost because I didn't keep it in tight. But the center, the main thing I want to make sure is I can see, can you see where these seams butt against each other? So I'm going to put a clip on there. I'm going to make sure my needle is straight. I mean my pin, sorry. And I'm going to put a clip on there. And again, I'm going to make sure my pin is straight. And that's straight in, you know, this way and this way. I know my fingers probably don't make a whole lot of sense, but when you're actually doing it, you'll understand what I'm saying. So I'm ready to go ahead and sew. The other thing I want to point out is don't concern yourself with whether the paper edges are lined up with each other. The important part is to make sure your sewing is lined up with each other. So I'll go ahead and sew that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so remember that when you start to sew this, we've had the clip still on it, or a pin. Make sure you go, when you go to your sewing machine, turn your wheel and put your needle down in the stitch or two before the beginning so it's lined up. Then put your foot down and you can take that first clip away. So I've gone ahead and sewn it, so let's see what the outcome is. Oh, look at that. So see, that's a nice thing with paper piecing. And again, here's another thing you may want to keep in mind is if you wanted to have the four of the color one all in the center so it would come across here and down and here and over, gives you another design, then I would either cut all four of them separate, and then you can turn them however you want them to look, or at least cut two of them and then you can turn them that way. If you're really interested, and it doesn't matter if you've already paper pieced them. Once you start getting ready to put them together, and you've got the fabric already on, remember you can still go across and just cut in between the dashed lines out here, which would have been out in this part, and then you can turn this particular block whichever way you want. So I'm going to take my seam ripper and normally it goes right across pretty quick, except I'm trying to do this for you in front of the camera here. Let me get down the other end. I can do this way then. And then you're going to take this paper away. and sometimes it does come away in little sections because I've sewn out there. And I'm keeping my finger close to my stitches. And I've got a little piece, there we go. So that when I press this, I'm going to press it so that, let me get it right here for you. The seams are all going in the same direction, and what I mean by that is this seam is going this way, this way, this way, and this way. So it's like a pinwheel, and what that does is it makes a little four-patch. See right here in the middle, so that there's no bulk. There's absolutely no bulk in that seam. So I'm just gonna go ahead and press it, and I'm done. Okay, so here's our finished block. And if you would like to, if you would like to have this block so that all of this one color is in the center, like I did with this one, and it's hard to tell because the red is so prominent, but see, all the polka dot is in the center. And you're going to leave it all one piece. The only thing you have to do is make sure that every strip that's facing towards the center, it starts with a 1. So on the A's, I had to reverse it and do 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4 this way. So I put an A, and I remarked it 1, 2, 3, 4, put a line out of it. And then on the B, it would be the same thing, because I want to make sure my number 1 fabric is here, 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 and here, so that they all meet in the middle. So again, I just took my pencil, crossed out the ones I had, and I reversed them 1, 2, 3, 4, and still made sure I wrote a B, so I know I'm on my B, so that you get this look instead, if you're keeping the 4 sections together without cutting them apart when you get ready to sew. So here's one block, and here's another one. And again, you don't have to even do them all the same. This could be scrappy and they could all be different. That'd be cool too. Or they could be scrappy and just these 4 are the same. However you want to do it. So there's your options, and I hope you enjoy this block.